is that Michael Jackson was originally brought on to compose the game's soundtrack, but left the project before it was finished. It's unclear why though, with some citing that Sega didn't want the association with Jackson's sexual assault scandal at the time. Others say it was due to Jackson being unhappy with the quality of the Genesis sound hardware. The follow-up game, Sonic & Knuckles, doesn't change any of its core gameplay from Sonic 3. Tails is no longer in the game, and you can now pick between Sonic and Knuckles. Knuckles is a slower character and can't jump as high as Sonic, but does get to glide in the air, climb walls, and punch through objects that Sonic can't. There are cutscene and boss differences for each character, giving the game good replay value. Strangely, Sonic 3's save feature is not available in Sonic & Knuckles. Linking the two cartridges together creates the full game experience the devs wanted, dubbed Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Finishing the final level of Sonic 3 simply goes right into the first level of Sonic & Knuckles, making for a seamless experience. You can now play as Knuckles in Sonic 3's levels, and use Tails in the Sonic & Knuckles levels. In addition, Sonic 3's save system works across the SNK levels. Both Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles were well-received games upon their respective releases. Some critics noted the lack of advancement and new features from Sonic 2, but the games were praised for their great level design and variety. Many fans consider the full combined Sonic 3 experience to be the series' best. With the full game finally out, Yuji Naka and most of the Japanese staff of STI returned home to Japan. But Hirokazu Yasuhara stayed in the United States. This marked the end of the legendary partnership between the two creators, along with the last major Sonic game from Yasuhara. With Naka back in Japan, he reunited with Naoto Oshima, and the two took a break from Sonic and created the action game Nights into Dreams. Sega wanted a major Sonic title for the Genesis' successor, the Sega Saturn. Members of STI began working on Sonic X-treme, a game meant to use the Saturn's hardware to bring Sonic into full 3D. X-treme faced a famously troubled development for years before being quietly cancelled. Following the cancellation, the Sega Technical Institute, home of some of Sonic's greatest games, was disbanded. There were a number of Sonic spin-offs to fill in the gap X-treme left. The Genesis add-on The 32X got Knuckles Chaotix, a side game starring Knuckles along with the introduction of new characters. A number of early 3D Sonic games do exist as well, such as Sonic the Fighters for arcades and Sonic 3D Blast and Sonic R for the Sega Saturn. No true major Sonic game was ever released for the system.
One, two, three! Sonic! Sonic! Sonic!
The original concept for what eventually became Sonic Adventure came from Sonic 3's senior game designer Takeshi Iizuka, who pitched the idea for a Sonic RPG in 3D. While the full-on RPG idea didn't stick, it did influence the team to give the game a greater emphasis on story. After finishing Nights into Dreams, Sonic Team took on the project, with Yuji Naka and Naoto Oshima returning to the series, while Iizuka directed. The game was first programmed for the Saturn, but as it became obvious the system's lifespan would be cut short, focus was moved to Sega's next system, eventually known as the Sega Dreamcast. In fact, Naka helped with the creation of the console so that the game could take full advantage of the hardware. Major emphasis was put on creating the most realistic worlds possible, and the development team visited locations in both Central and South America for references. Many of the locations visited were used as direct inspiration for areas in the game. To represent a brand new era of a more realistic Sonic, design changes were made to all the characters. Yuji Ukawa was tasked with the job of creating a more stylized look, inspired by graffiti art. The hype was pretty high once word got out that Sonic Team was developing a new game. The game was given a massive public unveiling at the Tokyo International Forum on August 22, 1999, and was released in Japan a few months later on December 23rd. However, the game needed a lot of polish for its US release. Sonic Team split off once again, with Iizuka and several team members heading to San Francisco, the home of the disbanded STI, and forming Sonic Team USA. When localizing the game, the team decided to finally get rid of the differences between the Western and Eastern stories for Sonic, making the Japanese version canon, and characters like Dr. Robotnik were changed back to Dr. Eggman. Sonic Adventure was released in the United States almost a year later on September 9th, 1999. Sonic Adventure has a lot going on compared to previous Sonic games. You now have 6 playable characters, all with different styles of play, wrapped around a lot of story and cutscenes. Sonic's stages are speed stages, and his moves are, for the most part, successfully translated to 3D, with the addition of a lock-on for hitting enemies. Sonic's transition to full 3D was pretty impressive at the time, with large loops and big graphically impressive moments meant to show off the tech of the Dreamcast and convey a lot of speed. Knuckles and Tails return as well. Tails' stages have him try and outrace Sonic, and Knuckles has to treasure hunt Emerald Shards. The 3 new playable characters include a redesigned Amy Rose, who fights with a hammer and has to avoid an unkillable enemy. E102 Gamma is a robot that shoots their way through stages, and Big the Cat fishes. Tying together each level is the Adventure Field, a hub world where you can find story events and subgames to play. You can also find hidden Chow Gardens, where you can take a break and raise these cute little virtual pets. Adventure is where Sonic really tries his hand at some major storytelling. Dr. Eggman attempts to use a creature known as Chaos in his evil schemes, and Sonic and his friends must stop it. Each character's story ends up connecting to the rest. Only once every story is completed do you unlock the final story to see the ending.
No time for games, Sonic! Give me the emeralds you have, right now! What? Let's just see you take them! Huh.
Sonic Adventure was praised by critics for its graphics and gameplay, and is the best-selling Dreamcast game at over 2.5 million copies. However, this is where the fanbase begins to split. Some love Adventure, while others thought Sonic's transition to 3D wasn't all that successful, and still preferred the 2D games. Some felt the game was uneven, really enjoying the Sonic speed stages, but didn't care much for the combat or treasure hunting stages. Others complained about the lack of challenge, claiming that the game likes to play itself during certain cinematic moments. The game can also be buggy in spots, with audio hiccups and clipping. The US version had improvements not present in the Japanese game. Sonic Adventure International, which included these fixes, was released in Japan a month later. The game was ported to the Nintendo GameCube and PC in 2003 as Sonic Adventure DX Director's Cut, featuring changes such as improved character models, texture swaps, and added camera options. With Sonic Team now split, Yuji Naka and the Japanese team branched out with new projects like Samba de Amigo and Phantasy Star Online. Takeshi Iizuka had been officially handed the reins to the Sonic franchise, and he and Sonic Team USA began work on Sonic Adventure 2. The goal was to refine and expand what worked in the first game. Parts of Sonic Adventure were ditched from the sequel, like the hub world style adventure feels and the gameplay from Amy Rose and Big the Cat. The focus was on 3 styles of gameplay: Sonic stages, the shooting stages, now with Dr. Eggman, and treasure hunting quests like Knuckles. Even more emphasis was given to the narrative. The team added more characters, and this led to the idea of a Dark Sonic character, who eventually became Shadow the Hedgehog. Sonic Adventure 2 marks the end of an era, as several months before its release, on March 31st, 2001, Sega announced the discontinuation of the Dreamcast and them officially bowing out of the console market. The game was promoted as the last Sonic game for the Dreamcast and was released worldwide on June 19th, 2001, just in time for Sonic's 10th anniversary.
Rated E for everyone, only on Dreamcast.
Attention all units. Suspect seen heading south. Block all major roads and capture the suspect.
Sonic Adventure 2 has 2 halves to it: a hero story and a dark story. The hero side swaps between Sonic speed stages, treasure hunting with Knuckles, and shooting with Tails in a robot mech. The dark story features similar gameplay, but swapping Sonic with Shadows, Knuckles with Rouge the Bat, and Tails with Eggman. The gameplay is largely the same from Adventure 1, with refinements made to controls and movement, most notably in the Sonic and Shadow speed levels. While the hub world adventure field is gone, you can still enter the Chow Gardens after each stage, and play other side modes in the main menu. In the game's story, Eggman discovers the ultimate weapon, known as Shadow the Hedgehog, and the two team up and start stealing Chaos Emeralds. Sonic is mistaken for Shadow and is on the run from the cops. Adventure 2's story has better cutscenes, voice acting, and overall production values than the first. Adventure 2 is beloved by a lot of people, in particular the game's opening stage, City Escape, which was inspired by Sonic Team USA's new location of San Francisco. Yet, issues present in Adventure 1 can still be found in 2. The camera is better, but can still cause frustration. There's some bad audio mixing and occasional clipping. And those that didn't enjoy the non-Sonic speed levels in Adventure 1 are probably still going to feel the same here with the treasure hunting and shooting stages. Even though Sonic Adventure 2 released on a dead console, it did well upon release, and was praised by critics for its improvements over the original. A year after its release, a port called Sonic Adventure 2 Battle was released on the GameCube, the system of Sega's former rival. It was the first time a Sonic game was featured on a non-Sega platform, and where the game received a lot of its life. Without the backing of their own platform, Sonic Team USA felt the pressure to deliver a satisfactory Sonic game and tried to appeal to as wide a user base as possible. Fan demand for their favorite characters to be included led to the idea of team-based gameplay, featuring the largest playable roster of characters in the series to date. This led to the return and redesign of characters from the spin-off game, Knuckles Chaotix, along with 2 new characters. Sonic Heroes was released in Japan on December 30th, 2003, and a month later in the US on GameCube, PS2, and Xbox. In Sonic Heroes, you play through stages with one of 4 possible teams. Each team has 3 types of characters: speed, power, and flight. You swap between your heroes with different formations, using their specific powers to defeat enemies and progress past obstacles. Stages change slightly depending on the team. Sonic Team is the most traditional, with focus on high speed. Team Dark is meant for higher difficulties and focuses on killing enemies. Team Rose is meant for younger players, so the levels are short and focus on ring collection. The final team, Team Chaotix, has the hardest levels in the game, which are mission-based. Sonic Heroes received mixed reception. It was praised for its visuals and solid gameplay, but criticized for its repetitive design and uncooperative camera. The game also had technical issues, especially on the PS2 version, which Sonic Team had little familiarity with. After the release of Sonic Heroes, Sonic Team USA renamed themselves to Sega Studios USA. Despite the name change, their next project would be a Sonic game, although not one starring Sonic himself. The game would star Shadow the Hedgehog, Sonic's rival and series anti-hero. Takeshi Iizuka wanted to do more with the character after his introduction in Sonic Adventure 2, and fans wanted more of the character as well, winning a fan poll Sega put out on who should star in their own game. The game was to have a drastically different tone from the rest of the series in order to appeal to an older demographic. The team took inspiration from films like Underworld, Constantine, and Terminator. The goal was a gun action game that could balance both shooting and speed and help separate it from Sonic. Shadow the Hedgehog was released on November 15th, 2005 in the US and in Japan a month later. Despite its visual differences, Shadow the Hedgehog isn't a complete departure from the previous Sonic games. There is still an emphasis on running fast and collecting rings, but combat is given much more of a focus, with Shadow's use of a gun making it a sort of third-person shooter. Vehicles were also introduced. Shadow can hop in a truck or motorcycle to get around. In some levels, Shadow will get an AI partner, like Sonic, Tails, or Rouge. A second player can also play these characters in a co-op mode. The story is about Shadow trying to uncover the truth of his past. The mission you complete in any given level unlocks a particular level in the story path. There is a full tree of branching story paths with a total of 326 possible combinations. The story is meant for a far older crowd than previous Sonic games, with moodier tone and even swearing.
Where's that damn 4th Chaos Emerald?
Shadow the Hedgehog's massive shift in tone and gameplay did not pay off. Longtime fans didn't care for the darker tone, and critics panned the gameplay and level design. The game is considered by many to be a jumping the shark moment, and the worst in the series, at least until the next game. The next Sonic game would be passed back to Sonic Team in Japan. This new game was meant to be a rebirth of the series, celebrating Sonic's 15th anniversary by returning to the elements of the adventure games and bringing Sonic back to his roots. In honor of this idea, it was decided to simply name the game Sonic the